Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Risk with Dr. Naveen Agarwal. Each week, we talk about a topic related to risk management of medical devices in a very casual and informal way. This is not a webinar or lecture. Rather, our goal is to talk about key topics and challenges in a very informal way and share best practices. I'm your host, Naveen Agarwal, and I'm the principal and founder at Achieve, where my personal mission is to help you achieve success in risk management. My guest in this episode is Dr. Juan Dakash. He is an orthopedic surgeon, but he has been working in the medical device industry in a medical safety role for many years. In this conversation, we talk about the challenges medical safety professionals encounter when they enter the medical device industry, where they have to now work in a cross-functional team, including product developers, quality management, and regulatory professionals. We are also talking about what best practices we can use to improve our collaboration across different functions. Just as medical professionals have to bridge the gap in their knowledge, quality engineers and regulatory professionals also have to be willing to bridge those gaps in their skills and knowledge level. We had this discussion in front of a live audience as part of our weekly Let's Talk Risk conversations. You're about to hear a recording of our discussion. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to our weekly Let's Talk Risk conversation. So excited to be with you once again. So guys, I'm super excited to welcome Dr. Dakash today. And we're going to talk about some of the challenges and best practices for including medical input in our risk management process. We hear so much, hey, we must have medical input, but how to do this? What are some of the problems that we face in the real world and how best to overcome that? Very brief introduction. I'll have Dr. Dakash talk about his journey in a moment, but he's an orthopedic surgeon with 4 years of fellowship. He transitioned into industry, into medical safety roles for many years. So he has seen it all. He has seen the world of surgery. He has seen the world of medical industry and how quality management system works, how risk management system works. So we're going to have a very nice conversation today, and I can't wait to get it going. With that, Dr. Dakash, welcome today.
Thank you, Naveen. Please call me Juan.
Okay, Juan. Okay, great. Juan, so welcome once again. If you could just start by, sharing your journey a little bit, how you transition into the industry. Let people know where you are coming from.
Sure thing. I also see some familiar faces in the crowd. So hi, everyone. My name is Juan Dakash. I'm originally from Colombia in South America. Born and raised there. Did my Army service. And then I started med school here in the U.S. That didn't work out because out of country, out of state, lots of money. So I went back and finished med school in Colombia, then did orthopedics, then did 2 years of joint reconstruction. And then I moved to Barcelona, Spain, where I did 2 more years of joint reconstruction and prosthetic joint infection. When that was about to happen and I was getting ready to go back and, formally get it going with my life, from a medical perspective, 100% medical perspective, clinical perspective, wearing scrubs, being in the hospital 24 hours, 7 days a week, you know how it works. There was this opportunity that popped up that was not very common for surgeons. You would see positions in industry very bleakly by that time, and I'm talking 2010, 2012. And they were usually for internists or general practitioners to go into pharma. There wasn't a lot going around for surgeons, but obviously when you have devices in hand, companies were looking to bring in MDs, hopefully with the line of expertise in the same area in which you would be needing this type of knowledge. So that time, medical safety did not exist for J&J, but it was medical affairs, and that's where usually the point of entry is for an MD is medical affairs. And that's how I came to join J&J in 2012 as an associate medical director for the joint reconstruction business. But at that time, we were looking basically around all orthopedics. And really it was, when you join, and this is what I want to emphasize, is you're like a deer in headlights. Because, and again, for the audience, you got to go back to 2012. We are 12 years after that, so a lot of things have changed. But you are switching from what you expected to be your life in a hospital setting to sitting in a desk and looking at Excel sheets and listening to things regarding your line of knowledge, which was orthopedics and joint reconstruction more specifically, because I was hired for the joint reconstruction business. But still, the knowledge you had was not applied in the same way that you would apply it in a clinical setting. So that's the big hit right there.
Yeah.
And then you have to learn, all right, where am I going to fit in? So you start attending all these meetings, right? And again, you're attending meetings from all spectrums of project development.
Yeah.
And all spectrums of people that you have never dealt with. Engineers, project managers, marketeers, R&D folks, senior management, other MDs that are coming in from other areas, right? It was just very convoluted. So you have to iron out a lot of things in those first 90 days and your first years there to better understand what the heck is risk management. What are you talking about? There's always a risk, right? This medical mentality into risk. And then long story short, 10 years go by in J&J. I transitioned from medical affairs to medical safety, which for J&J is an independent group, not related to medical affairs, but working very closely with medical affairs. And we can discuss the differences in another time, but we were still working as the same medical team, but now focused on medical safety. Yeah. So when that came to be, I was offered a position to lead the product safety for an aesthetic company. And as soon as I got that opportunity, I immediately went, me, aesthetics? What? I have no knowledge in aesthetics whatsoever. It's a no. But then I said, hold on. In the last 10 years, the way I had entered the industry was, let's follow a modified Pareto rule here. It was 95% knowledge on orthopedics, 5% knowledge on everything else. But in those 10 years, and you paving your way to what you think you should be learning, because you will be learning and have to learn a lot of stuff, you have to flip that Pareto and become, you still have those 5% knowledge in orthopedics to be applied whenever you need them to, but you gain 95% knowledge in everything else. Risk management, clinical studies, all of that. So when that came to be and they told me about this aesthetic position or position in aesthetics, leading the product safety team, I said, hold on, I'm basically agnostic to the product. It is a medical device. Because I have no knowledge in pharma. I did not start in pharma. I started in medical devices. So I took the leap, and it's almost going to be 2 years that I lead the product safety team under R&D. But it goes far beyond product launch for an aesthetic business. So yeah, that's the story.
That's an interesting journey. Thanks for sharing that with us, Juan. I think the first question that pops into my mind, and I'll share my personal experience a little bit here just to set the context. I'm an engineer by training, and I did product development for many, many years, and I found myself into a quality role, again, in a J&J company. And when I came into quality, it was like learning a new language, because regulatory people and quality people speaking a totally different language to me. I was familiar with the idea of risk and quality in my product development job. So my question to you is that when you came into a medical safety role or medical affairs role, working with a cross-functional team, what were some of the key differences that you saw in the way you were approaching risk for a medical device as a doctor versus what other people were approaching risk from a quality product safety regulatory point of view?
That's $1 million question. I mean, and here's the thing, right? Again, you come in and you think you know everything from a clinical perspective, and maybe you do. And then the human mind compensates your lack of knowledge with just going on and on for hours and hours of what you do know.
Yeah.
Right. So when I was sitting in a looking at a harms list or looking at a dFMEA or looking at a risk assessment matrix, having no idea what the heck that document was, right? I started overcompensating with just going on and on and on and on about, joint reconstruction and infection and the pathologies and this. And again, the way I see risk is very different from a clinical standpoint that now I know from an industry perspective when you're dealing with a cross-functional team in order to get together and analyze risk, right? So the way that you define risk as a clinician is very different than the way that risk is defined in a cross-functional setting where you all have to come together and define that risk by looking at severity, by looking at P1, P2 and the probabilities, by quantifying that. How are you going to quantify? All of that just starts exploding in your face, right? Because you're coming in and you as an MD have ingrained that worst case scenario always in your mind. So everything has a risk. Everything is severe. You can all die. Anything can happen, right? So de-escalating your amplified perception as a clinician is one of the things that I had to learn first and better understand, all right, how are things done by the people that are doing it? And then how can I collaborate, not impose, but collaborate? And a lot of physicians are dealing in their day-to-day, which in areas in which they make the decisions, everything is done the way they believe should be done.
Yeah.
They are the final deciders. And now you're coming into a team where usually you're going to have to be part of that team that decides. It's not only your voice, it's a cross-functional collaboration. So again, on your perception on quality, for me, I always tell my team and people I work with, there is no quality without safety and there is no safety without quality.
Absolutely.
And by collaborating with our engineers and asking them, right? There's a great phrase that was made famous by Ted Lasso, but it's by Walt Whitman. It says, don't be curious. Be curious, not judgmental. So ask questions.
Ask questions.
Right?
Ask questions.
And a lot of questions were asked and a lot of questions were answered. And it went both ways, right? Engineers to an MD, MD to engineer.
Yeah. And it shows because, I know you have done training in quality management systems, and it's sort of unusual for an MD to now take that step to start learning that language. And I hope colleagues on in our audience will be inspired by that, to say reach out to functions beyond your own function and get some learning, get some training to start speaking that language. So my question to you is, what prompted that step from you to learn more about quality and regulatory world as an MD? Was it just your nature that, hey, I need to start learning that, or something happened to prompt you to do that?
Yeah, so I'll refer you to The Art of War by Sun Tzu, right? That book. That's kind of a guideline in the sense of I wanted to, we get audited, right? This is something that you probably don't see in the clinical that much because you're usually not audited unless something happens from a patient perspective and you have a legal issue going on, whatever. But in industry, audits are bread and butter of everyday life. So, I wanted to apply what I had done for my clinical life in a sense of when I was preparing a case, I wanted to know every answer before the question was potentially asked. So I trained on every case by case to ask myself questions. What would this attending ask me? What would this person ask me? So I flipped that into, industry and said, what would an auditor ask me? And the only way for me to understand what would an auditor ask me about is by becoming an auditor. It's a Six Sigma mentality, very basic, right? I needed to understand in order to do my job better, what will I be asked upon in order for me to do a gap analysis and fill that in? And that's where I started finding so many areas that obviously I needed to invest in knowledge because I did not know beans about anything when I joined. But it is a process. You start getting to know people that will teach you. They will start pointing you. You will start learning what an HHE is, what a recall is, what risk management, how does it tie back? How does it all come together? So that's kind of the answer to your question. That's what prompted it.
That's wonderful. And again, what you are inspiring us to think about is, hey, understand the gaps in your own awareness, your own knowledge, and have the humility to acknowledge that and accept that and take the next step. So before I open up for questions, and I hope, guys, we have a very good discussion on this, a great opportunity here to ask any question you have to Juan or share your comments. But one question I would like to ask you here is just to set the stage, in your experience and where we are now, like let's say 10, 12 years later, since medical safety has been coming into our quality regulatory world, which is a good sign, what have been some of the major challenges in bridging that gap between these two functions? And, where do you see things moving now?
Yes, that is a good question. And one of the questions that I get asked a lot, and we were discussing this a little bit earlier, is some companies can't bring in MDs as part of their cross-functional teams because it is a reality in a sense of companies may not be able to hire a surgeon at the same level that they were getting their income based on 10, 15 years of practice. But companies are finding the way of doing that, either being outsourced or the physicians understanding they're coming in at a level that it's what's normalized in industry and they accept it, to change their kind of way of seeing. And I do want to stress something out before we open it up to questions. I see Bijan is in the audience, and I want to congratulate him in this forum for a great one-day symposium or conference that was held in Minneapolis about a week ago, in which there were a lot of conferences focused on risk management, but you'd also have clinicians from Medtronics and from elsewhere that are trying to bring forward the importance of, one, including risk management in the curriculum of medical students. This is, for me, critical, and this is something that I would love to be part of, in a sense of the reality is that today a lot of people are studying medicine to go into industry. And this is something that has not been the modus throughout the years. You studied medicine to wear scrubs, go patient surgery, whatever. That was your idea. That was your north. That was what you were shooting for. A lot of people right now are seeing how the industry has opened up, and they're saying, I want to study medicine, like people used to study like biomedical engineering, to go into industry. They want to be a doctor that works in industry. But if your curriculums do not include areas like risk management, cross-functional collaborations, dFMEA, all of that, then the transition for that position is going to be slower.
Yeah.
So I think we as MDs or people that are working in this area of risk management have to see ways of including risk management and all of this kind of quality type subjects into medical curriculums.
That is awesome. Great. So thank you again for bringing that up. And yes, Bijan, congratulations again for pulling together that conference. It's great to hear about that. So guys, I'm going to open the floor, and I hope you participate in this conversation, bring your own perspectives, and I'm going to bring in as many people as I can. So don't wait your turn. Just show me your hand and I will bring you up. So floor is open. Bijan, you are up first. Please go ahead and share what you have in mind.
Hello, Juan. Very good to hear from you. Really enjoyed your talk. And thanks for acknowledging the conference. It was an amazing success. Really, really great. And in fact, I see that Ed Bills is on the call too. He was one of our speakers. Juan, this was a very good point. I hadn't thought about this, about offering training in risk management to physicians. As maybe you remember, during a conference, we had a professor from Drexel University that was calling on universities to offer training in risk management to biomedical engineers, which is something that's been lacking. But I hadn't thought about physicians. So this is, I'm going to take that as a really great suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Bijan, I think it's so important because that's the little trap right there. Biomedical engineers. Again, you're still focusing on engineers that have some knowledge of bio, whatever you want to put it. But when you have people that have been working in the field as a clinician, or with devices, right? Because let's focus on devices. They're the ones that have been using the instrument. We forget that devices are not only the device, but they have instruments. Mm-hmm. We forget that these work as a system. right? You have dFMEAs for the implant, you have dFMEAs for the instruments, and hopefully you have a dFMEA that combines them in a system, right? So bringing this to the attention of MDs as training is going to be far more important than training them in so many areas that they potentially will not take advantage of. Because, and I put this in a post on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, risk management and risk management philosophy, you can apply it to your day-to-day life as a person, right? Acknowledge the P1, P2, and the severity of whatever problem you have. And you can use that in your everyday life. So it wouldn't be very, very different to bring it to an MD with that MD mentality. And I'm sure it'll be more positive than negative.
That's really awesome. Great discussion, guys. And we have several people here. So I'm going to now invite Rafael to unmute your mic and please share what you have in mind.
Hi, Juan. Well, hearing about the background, reminding me a lot of mine being and hearing it with the background software as well, familiar that in quality in a couple of different areas. Largely, but schools of my family, you feel that they feel authenticated, and all that. They say, as you mentioned, being a clinician, we take risks all the time. What would you say about the ability of an allied healthcare professional, those who's not an MD, maybe an RN, a hearing aid specialist, and actually something like that to advise or perform that type of function in a medical device company?
Oh, so 100%. So, Rafael, you were a little bit muffled, but I think I got the idea. I want to get something straight here. And for people that know me, I have been the same person all my life. The fact that I put an MD after my name does not make me anything different. I put it for formal reasons, et cetera, et cetera. But the work of healthcare is not solely on the MD. It's also a cross-functional collaboration. They're all just focused on the same healthcare. So nurses, attendings, other physicians, other people that work around healthcare are 101% capable of providing input from people that have been part of the system. They may not be the one using the scalpel and putting the implant, but they have been around, and potentially, if you cannot get a physician, you will be having I don't want to say the next best thing, an equally great thing with you in your team to provide that sort of knowledge.
Yeah. And one area where I have seen enormous contribution from people with nursing background or some other healthcare background is in the complaints department, where we are evaluating. We are evaluating every individual case to understand the patient perspective or the doctor perspective, and I think it can be done in a very, very efficient way in that role.
So, Naveen, that is a great point, because we had a complaint handling unit, and my go-to were the nurses. And the great thing about having nurses is that you start creating the same thing you had in clinical practice. You had the nurse look at the case first, and if they couldn't resolve, right, they would come to you, and you would have that conversation, right? But also, it allows you as a person in the same team to empower them to make those decisions from their medical background, something that maybe in their nursing practice they were not allowed to do.
Yeah.
They weren't allowed to take action on something because, again, the legal laws and everything that follows around the clinical practice.
Yeah.
But you're 100% right. So nurses are able to do medical writing, are able to do complaint handling, anything that's regarding the use of instruments or tools or devices. Even some nurses can be even better than MDs. So, for example, in an ICU unit, you're working with catheters, you're working with so many things that nurses are the ones that actually are there listening to the beeps 24/7. Right?
Yes.
The doctor comes in, checks, and goes away, but the nurse is the one that's there. The nurse is the one that has hands-on. So, every person in healthcare is welcome.
Building on that, I also want to add very quickly is that these are the best people to actually gather more information from the customer side or the patient side or the doctor side in the complaints gathering, information gathering process. They can ask the right questions and get the right information. So awesome discussion, guys. And those of you who are just joining, we are talking about this, collaboration or intersection between medical knowledge and risk management. So keep your questions coming, guys. We still have plenty of time. Rune,
So
go ahead.
I mean, one thing before, because you mentioned something, keyword patient, right? And other thing that we need to understand as physicians in quality is that we may not have patients, but we have to include the patient's voice in risk assessment. And this is something that is coming in harder and harder each time. Real world evidence or another source is bringing in the patient's perspective of risk and of benefit. Because one of the hardest thing, and I brought this up in Minneapolis, the question I said is, we're very good at quantifying risk, but we're not very good at quantifying benefit with the same denominator in order to determine that famous phrase, the benefits outweigh the risk.
That's right. That's right.
Because it's safety, and safety is not the absence of risk.
Yes.
Safety is the and this is, I saw it in Minneapolis, is the freedom from that unacceptable risk. But then you have to define what's unacceptable.
Yes.
And that's where it all comes to play.
Awesome points. Rune, thank you for waiting patiently. I invite you to share your thoughts.
Well, hello, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Naveen, first of all, for putting this together. Much appreciated. It's always nice to share this kind of industry knowledge with each other when we kind of sit on our own little islands. And interesting to hear your story. I was also in orthopedics, and in 2012, fate led me to medical devices. So that's fun to hear. So my question is around master harms lists. Is that something that people use? And I'm thinking also around like the philosophy, the tenets behind it. How do you make the list useful and convenient and relevant? Specifically, because you can have very specialized list that talks about every single intimal tear to the innominative vein. And you can have a list that's very general and says organ injury, vessel injury. And then finding that balance, like how do you strike that balance, particularly now that a lot of notified bodies are asking for like specific wording. We have to see hypercapnia throughout the documentation. How do you avoid the list growing out of control?
You can't. That's the thing. Because it all has to tie up with perception of your product life cycle. And what you do on the harms list side has to be reflected in some way in your IFU side, right? What are you going to write in your IFU? And that's where the auditors kind of like to play around it and said, let me see how you wrote your IFU. And then you go back to your harms list and maybe, you have harms that are in the harms list, which it does become a massive harms list, but you don't have them in the IFU because the way you get from your harms list to the IFU, well, you guys know this, there's a lot of things that has to happen for you to actually determine to put it in the IFU. But your harms list, the way I can, make this, you have to incorporate every potential scenario that you see it. And you have to include, I would say, MEDRA coding and IMDRF coding as well, in order for you to create a same language between the harms list and everything that will happen afterwards. But there is and the way I mentioned MEDRA is by hierarchy, and you can always determine, the severity of the harms that can happen, and that's the beauty of the probability. But don't get tempted to exclude harms from your harms list because it gets too long.
Yeah. So I think that's a great point you made, Juan, using MEDRA or IMDRF codes. I practice this very effectively, Rune, in my work, working again very closely with medical safety officers. And one of the benefits we got, remember, before all this, people used to use terms in their complaints coding system to describe harms. Well, they are not standard terms. And sometimes the other term happens to be the most frequently used term. So what we were able to do was to consolidate all these terms that were being used as a determinant of harm with MEDRA codes. And there was a lot of consolidation. We were able to, what I'm hearing in your question, Rune, is how do we prevent it from getting it too big, and how do we maintain it over the product life cycle? And the suggestion here is really to look at the MEDRA codes and use the codes with clinical expertise that are relevant for you. But Juan, you make a good point that we have to continue doing it as we learn more and more about our product.
Right. Yeah. And from a clinical perspective, Naveen, there are so many things that are called the same way for the auditors, right? So for example, a heart attack and an infarct all of these types of words that for you as a clinician mean the same. For the quality management and people that are not trained in healthcare, may be different things. So trying to eliminate the duplicates would be great. And that is where I will open this up, because this is, I think, where it's going to be helping is AI for harms list creation. I think that would be amazing. So all of you people that are out there that are working with AI, we're waiting. We're waiting on something like that.
Oh, I'm sure we are at the cusp of having these tools. Now, we are running short on time, but Ed, I really appreciate your patience. I invite you to share your thoughts. Please unmute your mic.
Okay, Naveen, I got lots of things on my list here.
Okay.
As I've been listening to Juan and everybody else. The master harms list that came up, I first crossed this in 2005 with a company that made AEDs. And they had two master harms lists. One for an AED without a pacemaker and one for AED with a pacemaker. And based upon their experience and their medical team's input, every device that they developed had to have those harms that are appropriate on their list that they'd address. So it's a great tool, and it's been around a while. But it is evolving, and IMDRF and MedRef certainly have contributed to that. And that was discussed last week at MedCon, because after I left Minneapolis, I went to Columbus, Ohio, to the MedCon conference where FDA's a major input. And, I wanted to say something else about the conference with Bijan. One of the things I used in my presentation was that risk management is a team sport. And when I first started in risk management, it was an engineering team, and that's all we had. And it was very limited in its scope. And as we widened the scope on the participation, it improved the inputs. And we used people like the product liability insurance carrier, because they had a whole lot of experience about product liability cases and things that happened in the field.
Yeah.
So there's lots of people that can contribute, and certainly the medical and clinical people are key to this being done right. So we definitely have to include that.
Yeah.
Those are the two things I had on my list right away, and I'm sure
Ed.
there's a lot more I could discuss, but
Thank you, Ed.
in the interest of time, we'll let you.
Yes. So we are running short on time, but I never say no to anybody who raises their hand. So we're going to take one last question or comment from Carlos. Carlos, please unmute your mic and share what you have in mind. Carlos, are you able to hear me? You're here with us, but looks like you might be having some technical difficulties. So, yes, looks like some technical difficulties. Sorry about that, guys. So let me try to wrap this up, guys. I'm going to give Juan just a couple of minutes to collect his thoughts to share some key takeaways today. But I'm going to make only a few announcements here, just as a reminder. First of all, those of you who are new, we do this every Friday. So just, you can mark on your calendar if you're interested in attending this. The announcement will come out a week before for our session coming up. In fact, it has been posted, and we're going to talk about FDA's pre-sub process next week with somebody that, I've come to know recently. So we are going to be talking about these different topics. So put these on your calendar, and we record these sessions in case you missed them. So you can listen to these recordings on my Let's Talk Risk newsletter. The link to that newsletter is in this event page, the first link here, where you can go up and sign up with that. And finally, I know all of you have something to share and contribute. So this is a very casual, informal conversation. If you're interested in participating, reach out to me and say, hey, Naveen, I would love to come on this session and share my experience with your audience. I would love to have you. So please reach out to me. And, Carlos, looks like you are trying to request here. Let me see if this works. I'm again going to give you an opportunity. Go ahead, Carlos, please share what you have in mind.
Hey, Scott, apologies. I disconnected. Juan, I'm also from Colombia. I know you from previous experiences. So just wanted to congratulate you and your team and for this conversation. Very insightful. Just just a quick one, stepping a bit away from risk. And I share your initial thoughts on challenges for MDs to step into the industry. I currently lead a global medical strategy team. What would you say are key skills that us MDs and healthcare professionals lack to be valued members of cross-functional teams in the industry?
So, hey, Carlos, nice to see you again. I need you to rephrase that question because I'm not sure I quite got it. What are the key aspects that we as MDs should ask for other people to have, or that we should have?
I guess, what are the key skills we lack? Coming from, from a clinical background, from maybe a research background, we're very, I guess, we don't want risk, right? We don't want to be wrong. And that's something that I've encountered and kind of lived with the different MDs in a team. We don't want to be wrong. So these are some challenges that we have as medical, groups in medical affairs or risk management. So just wanted to get your view on that.
Yeah, I think that as a whole, the whole risk management world is something that we need to get good at. We are not subject matter experts in risk management. Quality has always been historically the risk management experts, just because those were the engineers that are coming in historically from the way that risk management has been, approached by the airline industry, the automotive industry, and every other industry, right? So we are adapting all of those things. And these are engineers that are trained as engineers that are owning this space. But now it's opening up to other functions. And within our medical device and within our medical knowledge, we are the ones that have to come in knowing at least the basics of risk management. So lacking the normal risk management 101 is the first thing. And two, understanding what I kind of said before, we as MDs have this mentality ingrained because we're forced to make decisions on the spot. That one, we are the ones that make the decisions and whatever I say goes, right? Or two, I am right, I'm always right, and therefore you should do what I say because I say so, right? Yeah. Those kind of things need to change because trust me, you're not going to be right. Your word is not going to be the only word there. And those are the things that I believe, and I'll throw in a little grain of what I like as well, which is emotional intelligence, is some of the things that need to be brought in from an MD perspective to lower yourself to a position where you're humbly understanding that you're not the expert in the room, that you're willing to learn, that you're willing to collaborate, but you need to bring your cards to the table from an experience perspective and an emotional intelligence perspective as well.
Yeah, I think this is a great point, and it applies on the other side as well, right? Now, I can represent the quality and engineering world here, and I can say the same thing, that we have to also come at the conversation from the perspective of, hey, we don't know everything. So it's only through coming together as a team, and Carlos, you bring up a good point, and what I will add to that is we are building a community here. You have so many people in the audience here, right? We are not alone. Did you know that you can reach out to any one of them through direct messaging on LinkedIn, even if they're not your first degree contact? So make connections. Just don't spam them. Otherwise, I'll get in trouble. Don't spam them, but make connections and learn from each other. I think that's the key point here. Guys, again, we ran over, but it was awesome. Juan, if you could please close with just 2 or 3 key points takeaway today.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Naveen. I'm really happy to have been part of this. I thank you for what you do for this community. I really applaud your efforts, and I think they're coming to fruition on a day-to-day basis to create that group. That's my first takeaway. Thanking you and pushing everybody to follow your footsteps in trying to create a community in which we can all speak the same language. That's my second takeaway. We need to create a same language, right? If we don't communicate, our efforts will be in vain. Mm-hmm. And the way we get there is by us, from a medical perspective, understanding risk management. And I'm not saying that risk management quality members need to understand everything that we learn from medicine, but they at least need to understand a couple of things so we can at least create the same language. It's going to be an 80-20. It's going to be more of the clinician understanding how risk management works and vice versa. And the third thing that I want to say is ask questions. Again, Walt Whitman / Ted Lasso. Be curious, not judgmental. Do not make judgments like you would in a clinical practice. Ask the questions you need to ask If you have that fear of being seen as the dumb one, then that's your problem, right? I ask a lot of questions, because if you don't know, you don't know. Do not assume. That's my little caveat.
Yeah.
Do not assume. Just focus this as you would focus on medical literature. There are different levels, right, in which an opinion is the least evident level of information, with a meta-analysis being the highest. So try to get there. Try to shoot for that quality and information, so you can make the best decisions.
That's awesome. I feel inspired and energized. Guys, how are you feeling in the audience? Please show us how you're feeling using some emojis. You can do that. We ran out of time, but I would love to hear from you and see you again in a future conversation. Again, to emphasize, a recording will be available, and you can listen to the past recordings on the Let's Talk Risk website. With that, thank you, everybody, especially Juan, to you, to give up your time, and to everybody on this virtual stage today who took the initiative to come and share their thoughts and ask their questions. It is because of you that we are having this wonderful conversation. It wouldn't be any fun if there were just two people talking. So with that, guys, thanks a lot again. I wish you all a very good weekend, and I look forward to connecting with you once again next week. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.